if you don't have the mental mindset for it, it's going to be very hard for you to be successful.
She just has this motivation and determination to want everybody around her to be better.
I've never met someone who is so humble and has the skill level that she has.
What we do is dangerous, what we do is hard, what we do is exciting, what we do requires athletes.
She is a hardworking, humble, extremely talented individual.
A very good person to look up to and a person to aspire to be like.
She's perfect. And she's always willing to make someone else
know
better.
That she's always working hard. She's always on the side doing something extra. She's always at the gym.
It is very physically and mentally demanding. I was in the gym from 2 o'clock in the afternoon till 10 o'clock at night. So my mom was a coach, so I spent a lot of time in the gym, and it was great that I loved it so much.
The NCAA does not recognize cheerleading as a sport, mainly because they only acknowledge things that compete at least 5 times a year. Do you believe that cheerleading should be considered a sport by the NCAA or not?
Absolutely not. No. I think the whole reason behind cheerleading is to motivate or to cheer on or yell another sport. They're more of a service organization than a sport.
Definitely, because they run, I run, they jump, there's jumpers on the track team, and we don't flip like they can, but I mean, they do what we do and more.
I cheered all growing up, but just on a local high school team, and we didn't compete, so that to me wasn't a sport because we only practiced.
I can understand why the NCAA doesn't have a championship for it, and I don't think the NCAA really needs to budge on it, but I think it's a sport.
I think that cheerleading is definitely a sport, even though I don't consider them in competition when they're on the sideline cheering for another sport.
In your own words, can you define what a sport is?
I think the term sport is just anything athletic and out doing something.
Cheerleading, there's a lot more that goes into it than people think.
I don't know if I would have called it a sport, but being there, it definitely changed. It definitely changed my perspective.
It's an ongoing debate, the cheerleaders versus the jocks. The division between these two categories remains, even though cheerleading is constantly evolving.
The people who make decisions are stuck in the area where cheerleading was not a sport, and I think the sport has grown more than other sports have in the past. It used to not be. I wouldn't consider 80s and 90s cheerleading a sport because it really wasn't, but it really is today with All-Star and college and even high schools doing so many things that haven't been done in the past before.
According to the NCAA, a sport is defined as an institutional activity involving physical exertion with a purpose of competition. Sports include regularly scheduled head-to-head competition within a competitive season. There are 10 to 13 games in a college football season, approximately 29 games in basketball, and 45 to 60 for baseball. But for collegiate cheerleaders, it all comes down to 2 minutes and 15 seconds on the mat. It takes intensive training. It takes holding themselves to another level. It takes a risk to their bodies and the trust of their teammates. They may not be as different as we think.
I think it's a sport because it requires as much as any other sport does.
I mean, it's hard stuff, like flipping your body around and throwing people in the air, but I also don't think it's a sport sometimes because, we compete once out of the whole year, and also the judging that kind of goes on, sometimes it's a little political.
I can see why people don't consider it a sport, which bothers me, but I definitely think it is. I think we deserve so much recognition for the amount of time we work in, for how hard we work, for the amount of skill that it actually takes to do what we do.
But there's some guidelines that you have to go through where you have to have a specific coach, you have to have a locker room, you have to have things that are very similar to what they have for a regular team. So the thing is, for some schools, do they have the space to do that? Do they have the budget to do that? Is that something they're interested in doing? Because, when you add a sport for Title IX reasons, typically you're going to add that as something that that would satisfy the interest of sports people in your state or your area.
Morning workouts, rigorous practice schedules, and flying up to 4 stories high are all a part of the intense environment that competitive cheer teams belong to. One of the nation's most well-known cheer squads is placed in the small town of Stillwater, Oklahoma, at Oklahoma State University. The sweat, the tears, and even the blood all make cheering for a national award-winning team one of the most athletic and unpredictable activities.
My mom was very strict about keeping your body healthy and good nutrition and stuff, so that was kind of ingrained in my head as a young kid. Not so strictly, but just kind of I knew it was important and it was something I needed to do to be my best athlete.
It's hard on your body, it is hard on your mind, because physically you get to that minute and a half mark and you're like, I cannot go any further, and you end up doing it, but you might be on the ground after because you are so physically tired. With the pressure side of it, I think every athlete deals with pressure. Football players, for example, catching a ball in front of 30,000 people who don't want them to catch the ball is a huge pressure situation, and it's the same thing in cheerleading, holding a stunt above your head where thousands of people, and especially your competitors, don't want you to hold that stunt above your head is a huge pressure situation, especially when we have, especially in college, one shot. We have one shot, 2.5 minutes on a mat to prove that we are the best.
I mean, I work out 4 to 5 times like at the Colvin on my own, and then we also have mandatory workouts we do, and then just stretching on my own, eating right, trying to get enough sleep, with schoolwork. And with all that together, I mean, that helps me at practices.
Those team workouts for us consist of doing the Olympic lifts, like power clean, things like that, doing those strength building exercises like bench, squat, shoulder press, and then we have our own requirements to do cardio outside of practice and then at practice. So, it turns into a 30 to 35 hours a week type situation, especially when you factor in the fact that we're cheering football games, or cheering basketball games, or, being there wherever we need to be. If you've ever had the chance to see what we do at games, it doesn't just happen. We show up at practice, we get ready for, we're always getting ready for nationals to compete, but also we're preparing for games so that we impress the crowd and we impress the fans, and we're making sure that we put on a good show as well as doing what we're supposed to do.
They put in so much extra time, effort, energy in order to really maintain that fitness level that they need to perform the elite skills that we are performing.
Along with the pressure behind training hard, there's also an immense amount of pressure outside of the weight room. Successful Division I athletes become low-key celebrities and role models to the community.
Before I do anything, I always think, what would other people think? Or how do I want to be remembered? And every time I'm going to do something, I always think about that. And I think that's a huge thing, just building relationships with people and, just becoming the best person I can be.
You go out in the community, people recognize who you are, so yeah, there's a responsibility with that, but it's kind of a good thing. Just try to take it as a positive way and know that you can be a good role model for little kids or people that look up to you in this community.
I think it's a blessing to have this platform and to be able to affect people that you didn't necessarily think you could affect coming in, and whatever kids look up to you and whatnot, and to try to portray a good message to them, a positive message.
When you're outside of the cheer world, you don't really know the influence that these individuals have, but when you're talking about Whitney Love, Brittany Love, Carly Manning, and there's more individuals that, it's funny, here I am, I'm like, oh, they only have 20,000 followers on social media, only, right? And it's like, could you imagine if you had 20,000 people seeing everything that you posted and having to think about that all the time?
I honestly love it. I'm not necessarily asking for the fame or anything like that. I could care less about how many followers I have, but just even the other day I got a message on Instagram and this girl was telling me how much she enjoyed watching my videos and how much she looks up to me as a cheerleader.
The most amazing thing happened to me when I was 17, I think. This little boy inboxed me, and he had cancer. And he asked me to go to his gym and help him and stuff. And it was really cool because, that's all he wanted in life, was just to be my friend. And so that's cool to say that, I was an inspiration, or I was a role model for someone who's going through such a tough time.
People don't know us as well as they know Mason Rudolph or all the main athletes in the star sports, but in the cheer world we are really recognized, and sometimes it's difficult. You have to watch what you're doing, and you have to watch what you post on social media, and anything that you do, obviously people's eyes are on you, and it's kind of humbling to know that like people do look up to you and stuff, and it's an honor for people to look up to you, so it's kind of like you don't want to screw that up and by doing some silly little thing. So
it's clear that high-profile athletes are in the public spotlight, which is why people immediately notice when an injury happens on the field or the court. But what about the trauma that happens on the sidelines?
I wonder if it was something I did, or if it was just like a combination of both. Like, what could I have done to prevent that happened?
According to the American Academy of Pediatrics, cheerleading accounts for over 70% of direct catastrophic injuries among female college athletes. Consequently, even the most successful programs have seen some bangs and bruises. I guess that's what happens when you hold a human being above your head with one arm.
I missed almost the entire season except for nationals, thank goodness, because when 2 weeks after I made the team, I hyperextended my elbow, and that messed up all the ligaments and stuff, so I didn't get to do some of the first football games. And then after that, when we were at the bowl game, my knee just all of a sudden blew up. It was so swollen, and it had all this fluid in it, and so I was doing all this rehab. And then over spring break, I had hurt my wrist, so it was just I was constantly hurt, and it just killed me to be on the sideline and watch.
My knee, I tore my meniscus and had to have surgery, and it was awful. But something that I think speaks to this place as a program is when I came off that knee injury, I approached my coach about not tumbling anymore, and it wasn't an option. I rehabbed my knee. I came back in 6 weeks. It was awful. It hurt. It was awful not to practice, but it was also awful because my knee hurt so bad. But as soon as I rehabbed it and came back, I was expected to tumble. I was expected to do all these things. So it was very much the atmosphere of a hardcore sport and a hardcore athlete. And our coach is a little 4-foot woman, but she's just as intense as any other coach.
I yell at somebody for lack of effort. I yell at somebody for showing up late. You know what I mean? I yell for
I was middle area in a pyramid, and the flyer who I was catching hit me with her knuckle in my tooth, and my whole tooth just came out. The entire thing. Didn't even break, just came out. And so I was kind of freaking out. Our trainer just shoved it back up in there and went off to the dentist, and they put a wire on me, and I was good to go.
It was our first football game right after we did our pregame, which was great. Everything hit, and we go up and do toss extensions, and it's kind of an easy stunt, and you wouldn't expect to get injured on, which us being co-ed partners, we don't have spotters or anything, so he had a tendency to let his hands relax back, so I fell off the back of him, kind of in a taco position, my feet were over my head, and as soon as it happened, I couldn't feel my arms. So I thought I was paralyzed, of course. So it was a freak accident, I would say, because it's never happened once. That was the only time it's ever happened to me, and it hasn't happened again since. But it's just, the pain was unbearable. I just fractured only 10%, so barely anything on my T8 and T9 vertebrae, which is the upper back.
We have to remind ourselves that in football, like we said prior, they have protection. They wear helmets, they wear pads, and there's no pads or protection other than the flooring sometimes not, with a tumbler or a gymnast or a cheerleader. So the injuries can be real significant, can be surgical, and really kind of come in waves.
This gives a whole new perspective to putting your life in someone's hands. If cheerleading becomes classified as a sport, there would have to be drastic changes. NCAA sports require the presence of certified athletic trainers, access to medical staff and physicians, certification of coaches, and better practice facilities.
Truly, when you ask about injuries, the answer is we don't know. And the answer is we don't know because it's not regulated in the same way. We're lucky at Oklahoma State that we have an athletic trainer at our practices. We have an athletic trainer that's designated to the Spirit Squad. So if somebody gets an injury, that gets recorded and we know exactly what's happening. At other schools, they don't have an athletic trainer designated to them or even access to the athletic training room. The NCAA doesn't track injuries with cheerleading. So honestly, the answer when you say, how dangerous is it? The answer truly is we don't know.
I think that they should have an athletic trainer across the board. Just me being there was, I think, a good help for my coach. She is so talented and so smart. They are 100% trained to do what they do. They have the right technique. Sometimes they are just going for a level of difficulty that other teams don't have. And so that creates risk for injury. And it's not that they don't know what they're doing, it's just that when you put 10 bodies in a pyramid, at one time, there's bound to be something that's going to happen.
As of right now, the NCAA stands firm in their decision that cheerleading is not a sport. And many cheerleaders agree. But the new phenomenon of stunt is getting the cheer world fired up with new possibilities for competitive cheer.
And the things that they do with their body is just
I think the most amazing thing
amazing.
is that they're athletes and they act like athletes, but they have to have a smile on their face while doing it.
They're supporters.
I don't know much, but I know that they sweat and train hard.
It looks like it hurts.
I'm impressed. I have to admit that I'm impressed.
It's funny how the sidelines can be just as
Some of the
dangerous
stuff
as
they
the
do
field.
competitively is incredible.
I do respect what they do. I just don't know that it's a
I
sport.
never really wanted to be a cheerleader.
I realized that this is a combination of performance and
It's
athleticism.
crazy to me the
They
level
just
of
have so
celebrity
much
that some of them
spirit.
have.
They're so fun to watch.
Is it really not a sport?
I think that I found myself a cheerleader. She is always right there.